So as always, everyone, welcome to this month's Coach Developer Conference call. Guest today is Kristen Dieffenbach from the U.S. Center for Coaching Excellence, also West Virginia University. A couple of quick announcements. As always, you can always find past recordings on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Google Play. Please subscribe, leave a review. It actually helps other people find the podcast or the YouTube channel when they go out and search for it. Two things. I think most everybody is probably well aware of the USCCE is hosting a American Development Model and Youth Sports Symposium here in Colorado Springs in December. If you don't know about that or are interested, if you Google USCCE ADM Youth Sports Symposium, you'll get the link. And then also, you know, it'd be really bad for me, particularly since I'm on the planning committee for the summit, to not promote that the Coach Developer Summit is coming up June 17th through the 19th here in Colorado Springs. That's 2019. And that abstracts are still being taken until November the 18th. So if you had been kicking around the idea, here's a great chance for you to submit an abstract and share your knowledge with your peers and others. And we'll talk about the summit with Kristen. A couple upcoming ones, November 20th, so this month is a twofer. Dr. Sergio Lara Bercial, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who's involved with I Coach Kids, is going to be on November the 20th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Christy Erdahl is a professor here at Colorado College who has a book coming out about youth sports, and that will also be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. So with that, a couple of quick things for those of you on a computer. If you want to ask a question during this, if you just little bubble there, and that question will pop up, and I can pass it along to Kristen. And so there is information about Kristen. You are the executive director of the U.S. Center for Coaching Excellence, also a associate professor at West Virginia University, and you're a coach, you're a mental skills trainer, you're a sports psychology person. All these cool things going on, and I don't know how you have time to also be a wife and a mom. So, and you're probably not sure how you do that either, right?
Just keep moving forward, right? Isn't that the rule of distance running?
That may be it. Keep moving forward. Well, cool. Well, thanks for taking some time here. And Kristen, why don't we start out with the main purpose of this call was I want to give you a chance to update people on what's been happening with USCCE for the last year. You were on in November of last year, so maybe we'll make this an annual State of the USOC call in November. And just go ahead and tell people what's been going on.
Awesome, and thank you, Sam, for the opportunity to talk about the USCCE and the work that we're doing. So I'm currently the president of the USCCE, and in case you're not familiar with the USCCE and have not yet visited or been to our website, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to elevating and enhancing the profession of sport coaching, coach education, and coach development. Our main vision is that all sport organizations would have a systematic and integrated continuous approach to developing coaches guided by theory and best practice. So we are really working around this larger systems support and development of quality coaching for better athlete experiences and outcomes. And some of the things we're doing is we've been very excited by the growth of academic programs in the United States, particularly coaching master's programs. There has been a growth of programs in the online sector in this area. There have been a growth of programs in the academic realm with undergraduate degrees and minors in coaching. And we're real excited that in the last year we've developed a partnership with an organization known as NACAHE, which is the National Association for Kinesiology in Higher Education. They are the chairs and leaders of the academic programs. Outside of the academic world, there's also been a growth in recognition of the coaching profession, some of it being driven by concerns and some of it being driven by the importance and value that we place on physical literacy and quality youth experiences and quality youth development. And those things are really a part of some of the work that we're trying to do. There's also been a growth of the international conversation around professional development. And so we are really focusing on the recognition of the standards, the recognition of the international movement around professional development, and then within that, we've got our summit, of course, which you mentioned, and I can speak about a little bit more as we go along. We have launched a call for book authors, and we'll be developing a book series for people who work with coaches, the guiding principles from education, pedagogy, and the sport sciences to help the people who are overseeing and working with and training and developing coaches. So if you're interested in authoring such a book, there is a spot on our website at www.uscoachexcellence.org to read up more on that and submit. We are developing resources and excited to work with Sam in supporting the podcast series he does, but we also have a series of other events that we're doing in that realm of supporting the profession of coach developer, the people who work with coaches. One of the things we are doing is we have partnered with the ICCE. It's actually the first public announcement around the partnership with the ICCE and the MOU we've done there to develop a coach developer academy in the United States. And I can speak some more to that. And then we, of course, have our Raise the Bar initiative, which is growing, which is an opportunity for sport organizations of all sizes to take the pledge to quality coach development and quality coach education. And the pledge is a free thing that organizations can do, and in return they get the logo, which is a recognition of we pledge to support quality coaching education, and then resources that the USCCE helps to cultivate to support the people who are working with coaches. So those are sort of our big initiatives and the things we have going on right now.
That's a lot going on for a really small organization, and yeah, it'd be really kind of silly for me not to have you on, since we do kind of co-brand this, this podcast. So, you can come on anytime you want in that regard. Talk a little bit about the ICCE Academy, because I think that's one of the most exciting things. A group went through last June in Orlando. In fact, one of the folks who's on the call is a graduate of that program, I guess you could say. And if you feel at liberty to talk about the most recent thing you guys did, I think that's kind of cool. So what is the ICCE Academy? Why should people be interested in it? What are they going to get out of it? Just give us a lowdown on it.
Sure, happy to. The ICCE is the International Council for Coaching Excellence. It is the international organization leading this movement of professionalization of coaching and coaching education systems. The idea that, of course, they have a pretty big responsibility and job, and so we want to prepare them and help support coaches in the work that they do. And a number of years ago, they launched a coach developer program that helps to provide resources and tools to people who are in the coach education, coach development space. And they have worked with Nippon University in Japan and some of the other groups to provide these workshops. And this is the first time we brought it to the United States. And so when we look in the United States, we are currently providing the USCCE ICCE Coach Developer Academy. And as Sam mentioned, the first one was this past June, and it's a 3-day intensive workshop on facilitation skills and really rethinking how do we, if coaches are teachers, how do we train them as teachers? And how do we, as the trainers of the coaches or the preparers of the coaches, how do we facilitate that learning and content to application? And so a lot of this movement is around evolving coach education beyond just content to actually helping prepare them to be teachers, to be educators themselves of the athletes they work with, whether they are youth or adult athletes. And so taking a hard look at ourselves as coach educators and coach developers, and what skills do we need to do that effectively. And so the first workshop we do is the facilitation, which is about the facilitation of educational questioning, listening, review, and feedback skills that we as educators need to ensure that the coaches we work with not only understand the content but can apply it. And then we'll be running another academy that will be open to the general public next June, right before the summit, the 3 days prior to, so the 14th, 15th, 16th of June 2019 in Colorado Springs. And then immediately after the summit, we will be running the first Supporting Coaches in Practice program, which will be about helping, again, those individuals who are coach developers and who have gone through the facilitation program. They'll be eligible to do the second workshop, which will focus on how do you observe professionals in practice, coaches in practice, and help facilitate their growth and development through intentional observation and review processes drawn from the educational literature on how do you help mentor and develop someone's professional practice, we as the coach developers. And as Sam mentioned, we also do these workshops for groups that ask us to come in and do them, and we just held a joint workshop at the Olympic Training Center for USA Hockey and USA Swimming coach developers, the people within those two organizations that are responsible for training their coaches. And it was very impactful and a very meaningful 3 days of taking a hard look at their system of education and how to provide it in such a way that's beyond content but really is facilitating the learning, and how do they themselves as professionals enhance their skills to be quality educators. And it was quite impactful, and it was really, really well received, and we were really excited by the organizational movement in this space. As some of you may know, USA Hockey and USA Swimming are both organizations that have really taken a lead in long-term athlete development, long-term athletic development systems, and this is the next extension of that. If you're going to think about the athlete from that perspective, how do you start thinking about the preparation of the coaches who are responsible for, on the ground, implementing your LTAD or ADM systems? And now we're taking that to step up and say, okay, what's your structure within your organization to make sure that the coaches can do and implement what you've asked them to do? Are they teachers? Are they prepared? And so we were really, really excited by that workshop.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. And I know, unfortunately, I couldn't attend the one in June, and that still bums me out that I had my day job got in the way of doing, this really super fun stuff that is part of my day job as well. But everybody, but the first thing that most people told me was, wow, that was really long and draining. It was hard, but it was so beneficial to me when I came out the other end. And folks spoke highly of it at our NGB meeting here in Colorado Springs in September, as well as saying it was really transformative, I think is the best word to use for it, and probably a very appropriate word in coaching, development circles these days with that. So I'm looking forward to my next chance or my chance to be able to go through that process as well, and become one of the cool kids who's been through the ICCE Academy.
Yeah, we do have a special handshake, so if you go through it, you'll learn that for sure.
Excellent. I've always wanted to have the special handshake. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue into one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, because we oftentimes focus on the really negative stuff going on, and it's no secret right now in the Olympic sports world there's a lot of not good stuff going on. It can be a little depressing. I'll be honest with you, someone who's in this world. The only stories I see are about, decertification of NGBs or more abuse scandals or more people coming out. And we also, see coaches acting badly. I mean, University of Maryland football coach, this coach down in Miami, I don't know if folks have seen or heard that one, where he just, rips a kid who is wanting to transfer out of his high school. And it's just, still shocking that goes on. But let's highlight some good things that are going on around the country, perhaps. The old news thing is if it bleeds, it leads. But in this case, let's talk about the stuff that doesn't necessarily bleed to get on the news.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a huge, important piece, and that's something the USCCE is really passionate about, is how do we bring together all of the great things? Because one of the challenges the U.S. has, right, is that we're a huge country with not only an NGB USOC system, but a wide network of other people who are passionate about quality sports and quality sport systems for kids. There's local rec leagues. There's things within, for example, the YMCA system. There's other entities that are doing really great things. The challenge becomes is when we start spreading out and doing them all over the place, they are very powerful in their small spots, but because they don't network together, they don't get the collective power. And so one of the things the USCCE is really excited about is we're trying to keep a handle on and figure out what are the really great things going on, and how do we pull those people together, not under one roof to all do the same thing, because we're a big country with lots of different needs, and so that wouldn't be appropriate. But how do we bring them together so that we're aware of each other and we're talking, and then in the places that matter, we can use our collective power to help drive positive change. And so I spend a lot of time trying to keep up on things. And if people who are listening have things to share, please do. So as Sam mentioned, of course, we have the deregulation of NGBs. We have the Rice Commission report. We have some of the other things that have come out that are telling us that our system, while I'm not going to say it's bad, certainly has room to grow and get better. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about anybody who's in sport, right, is that it's always about getting better. So let's embrace that idea of, all right, let's see how we can continue to improve. You don't go to practice every day to stay the same. So some of the things that we're seeing and tracking are certainly the growth of the United States Center for Safe Sports and their evolution to become a leading organization, and the work that they've been doing in developing different resources, the stuff that they've done with partnering with RAIN for support of people who have had issues or concerns or feel they might need to talk to somebody about issues or concerns about abuse in sport. They're doing some amazing things and are doing some great leadership efforts. Certainly the NGBs I just mentioned, USA Hockey, USA Swimming, others that are taking the lead and saying, we're taking control of systems change. And what's most powerful about some of that is that it's being done because it's the right thing to do. When you talk to the leaders, I can't say enough about the leadership that's going on at USA Hockey. You talk to any of the leaders all the way up the chain, and they're going to talk about, this is about kids, and this is about our sport's fun and fantastic, and we want kids to get a chance to play and do this. And it's only, 10, 15 minutes into the conversation do you turn and talk about high performance stuff. It's the passion for kids playing. There's that growing conversation in the United States around long-term athletic development. The USCCE brands it the ADM, the American Development Model, but it's a conversation where people are talking a lot about, what do kids need? What's appropriate for kids at their age, at their level of development? Not what the entertainment model says, not what the adult model wants, but what do kids need? And what do they need for their growth, not just for becoming pro athletes? That's really exciting. And I'm glad you mentioned at the start the event that's at the USCCE next month. Certainly that kind of conversation will play in at the summit. Actually, at the summit next June, we are going to be doing a number of task forces around things like professionalism and coaching, the impact of research and quality research, and this idea of long-term athletic development, and what are action steps that these different organizations can come together and work towards. So if that's a passion of yours, coming to the summit and contributing to how your organization can be a part of this larger conversation is really essential. Also really excited, if anybody's been tracking, the Aspen Institute in Project Play has a history going back, to 2010 to 11, 12, with some of the early reports coming out in 13, 14, 15, and then the last couple of years, 2016, 17, 18, they've held a national event to talk about their 8 plays and how do we help better understand what's going on in youth sport in America and how do we better support it. And they have the ability to bring together some big players and big organizations that aren't necessarily even sport related. They're looking at asking kids what they want, reintroducing free play, encouraging sports sampling, revitalizing in-town leagues, thinking small so that, the development and the growth for kids, designing spaces for development, emphasizing prevention, and then the piece that we're most interested, they've got a train all coaches piece, and they're looking at developing and growing resources to provide a foundational level for the entry-level volunteer coach that will be free. And they've got some research stuff on their website about that. That was really exciting announcement at their event, at Project Play's event this past October, just a month ago. Feels like ages ago. It was just a month ago. And then just 2 weeks ago, the Knight Commission, and if you're not familiar with the Knight Commission, it's the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics. They are an independent group, but they make recommendations, and they pull together leadership from academics, athletics, and journalism to talk about reform and emphasizing values in sport. And the Knight Commission brought together a hearing and they've got the recording on their website about the credentialing and certification of collegiate coaches. And what's the conversation that we need to have around that, which was really exciting. And USCCE was there and as a spectator, not as a participant, but talking and being a part of that conversation is something we're looking forward to being going forward. So there's a lot of really good things. The USCCE is trying to help bring that together so that people passionate about this space know where to look for what's going on.
You know, you mentioned the credentialing of college coaches, and it just kind of hit me. I probably had this thought in some way or another in my life, but it's kind of weird that the coaches that are at the highest level, if you even talk about professional sports, what's their credential? They got hired for the job. That's about it. And they may have played the sport, may have played it well, may have played it poorly. But at the same time, all of us NGBs out here, you know, we're doing certification for our coaches that are working with the 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds, but it's kind of weird that it's such a topsy-turvy thing where, you know, you're hired as the baseball manager because you might have been a smart player or maybe not even a good player. But, you know, it's just understood that, well, you know baseball and other things like that. So we have a screwy system in a lot of ways.
Well, go back to the original, though, and I think this is fascinating that people forget, right, that in the early days, coaches were trained. You go back to some of the coaches iconic coaches that everybody looks up to, like Wooden, and you know, John Wooden's coming from a background of being a trained educator because initially coaching was tied to the scholastic system in the United States, and there was a connection between being prepared as a teacher to coach, and it was only as we got into the 50s and 60s and an entertainment model of sports started to grow and really become a financially lucrative place that, and we also at the time, think back to the early days of the Knight Commission, we had some challenges with concerns about were college student athletes really college students and were they getting educated, right? And at the time you saw a quick and decisive separation between the academics and the sport where PE dissociated itself from, oh, no, we're educational, we have value, a sports this entertainment model thing. And as the lucrative side came up, you saw people really pushing for wanting to be a part of that, and big name players became, big name player become big name coach. And we've somehow lost that idea that sport, especially for kids, is developmental, which means you need people who can facilitate development, which means that they need to know a lot of stuff. And despite all the value we've placed on it, we forgot that there's a skill set there that goes beyond. I'm not devaluing at all the value of playing sport and having mentored or worked with an elite coach, but any elite coach you talk to will say, you know, it's bigger than that. It's more than that. There's lots of elements. Karch Karai has been very vocal, I think, in talking about some of his development as a coach over the years. And, you know, as an elite player with gold medals and tons of credentials, he's put a ton of work into becoming the best coach because it's bigger than. And some of the stuff we're doing over in Norway right now, some of my personal research, we're looking at elite athletes who have become coaches after their transition, and coaches at all levels. And to a T, they're all saying, sure, it helps me, but it didn't prepare me.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Karch Karai, volleyball player, 3 gold medals, I think, both indoors and on the beach. And
as an athlete, before becoming a coach.
Yeah, and at one point he was voted the greatest volleyball player of the half century or some sort of award. Yep. So this guy who knows his way around. But I always admired him I've admired him that he, you know, has really taken getting better at coaching, much like it sounds like he did as a player. You know, I'm gonna keep working to get better, and that's an admirable quality in anybody. I was actually on Facebook, and I forwarded an article from USA Fencing about a coach, a well-known collegiate coach, and she's I think 2-time Olympian, and she came to a coaching clinic that I put on at a recent event, and it was awesome to see her walk through the door. Here's a woman who has been doing this at at really high levels for a long time, and she said you can always learn, and I was like, God, you know, I mean, serious crush on her at that point in time from a coaching standpoint of willing to learn from that. Cool. What other other good things you want to highlight around things going on, or you want to, or we can jump into my next topic I wanted to bring up with you.
I think we can go ahead and jump in. I know we're a little sensitive on time today because we had a little bit of a call-in trouble. So I can always talk forever. You know that. So you better focus me. Yes,
good point. Chris and I have known each other a long, long time, and our conversations can go off on tangents as well, and I'm doing my best to stay on task here as well. So this last part here really ties into these two things. The folks who are listening to this call most likely are NGB coach educators, or maybe work for a sport organization. I know there's some soccer folks that regularly either dial in or download the podcast. Some folks from multi-sport organizations as well. What can those of us who are trying to develop coaches and educate coaches, and God, John Kessel's going to cringe when he heard me say the word try, what can we do? What can we do, and what should we be doing?
I think that's such a great question and such a great conversation, because there's not an answer, it's a conversation, right? And there's the two elements to it. There's the personal as a coach educator, as a coach developer, and then there's also the systems of coach education and coach development. From the systems perspective, if you're in a role or a leadership role or can contribute to that, having those conversations about what does our system look like? How do we, taking an examination of, are we providing content or are we facilitating the learning of the content? And what does that really mean? I had a great conversation with US Ski and Snowboard a couple of years ago that led directly to them, to say, wait a minute, we don't know much about curriculum design, and we've thrown all this stuff at people, but we don't know if it makes sense from a systematic, planned learning perspective. And they brought in a curriculum specialist who I think you've had speak on the podcast, Chris Packard.
Yep, he was our very first one.
And he was our keynote last year at the summit. And just what a great marriage of, we've got tons of content and tons of specialized knowledge. Now here's somebody who can help us package it in a way that we can help facilitate learning, not just throwing a ton of information at somebody that they can't consume. And so if you're in that role, taking a hard look at the study of andragogy, which is the study of how adults learn best, and what are the ways that we can facilitate learning beyond content dump. How do we examine our content and start to see, do we even assess and evaluate? Is that knowledge being applied the way that we intend it to be, or are we just putting it out into the nether and contributing to all the great resources that will be PDF'd on someone's computer or shelved on their bookshelves if they're old like me and like lots of books? So there's a systems approach, right? Content to application shift, and thinking about your coaches as teachers, and is your system preparing teachers? Is it facilitating their growth as teachers? And then from a personal perspective, we can take some of that and start to think about, as coach educators, am I a presenter or am I a facilitator of learning? Am I doing a great show, which entertains people and keeps them there or puts them to sleep, depending on your presentation skills? Or am I facilitating, and am I actually, and a good facilitator actually is often more quiet than they are talking, because they're setting the stage for the learner, particularly the adult learner when we talk about coaches, whether they're volunteers or paid professionals. How are we helping facilitate their assimilation of that content into their practice? And how do we help them think about not just the what to coach, but how to coach? And so, things like the Academy, I would highly recommend, even if you are starting to think about this stuff, it's a place to come and spend 3 days talking to others who are in your profession. And that, to me, is often the most powerful piece. Not necessarily what we're providing, but most of us work in isolation. We're the one person in our organization or two that does this. And this is, am I facilitating learning? Am I really doing it? Let's take a deep dive and, in a safe place where other people are doing the same stuff, examine this. So look into the Academy. The applications for the 2019 Academies in June go live December 1st on the website. You can also sign up for our shout-outs through the website, and you'll get the announcement when that goes live. From a global perspective, the ICCE just put up the information. They've got just the very beginning of the information up on their main website, ICCE.ws, for the 12th Annual Global Coaches Conference, which is going to happen in Tokyo, Japan, with the support of the Japanese Sports Commission, October 30th, November 1st, Coaching the Cornerstone of Education, Equality, Ethics, and Excellence, I think is their title. And they've just starting to put up information about that in the last week. And that's an excellent place to peer network and work on your development as a professional. And then the summit itself is geared towards the peer network for coach developers. And in the meantime, picking up and reading about teaching. There's some great new stuff coming out in that area, and there's great old stuff about how to and how to facilitate someone's how-to skills. And so those would be places I'd start, I think.
Just to tie in on that one, a colleague of mine went to Doug Lemov, who educator, has written several books and does some workshops on this, and he attended one of those and said it was very impactful on how do you teach and how do you get folks to understand how the teaching part of it. I can't remember what Doug Lemov's kind of big thing was, but there's a ton of interviews I've heard with him as well, and someone I've tried to track down and haven't been able to get a hold of yet for this podcast. Cool. Oh, Kristen, our time is coming short here. Anything else you want? Any parting thoughts you want to give? And then if somebody has a question, if they want to, I'll open up to Q&A here in a second.
Well, first of all, just thank you, Sam, for doing this series and keeping the conversations going. And if you're in the space of coach education, coach development, I really encourage you, the more voices, the more people that are coming together and talking about it, even though we're all doing it in different ways and from different angles, the collective power of what we do is really impactful and has an opportunity to help make a difference. Because if we go down the road of a government entity or an organization mandating all coaches get X, it'll become a tick box and it'll become a check off and not a true environment of learning and development that sport participants and that sport deserve, and that what we really need for change, right, is if we're going to do this right, we've got to do it from a learning and development perspective, not a tick box, I've got my piece of paper perspective. So please join us. We're looking for as many voices that we can bring together as possible.
Well, and I'll put the challenge out, and I have been doing this for a few years now, of trying to get, gosh, I keep saying trying. I know John Kessel's going to cringe every time he hears that. I'm bringing together people here in town, and I mean, I'm lucky. I live in Colorado Springs. We have, almost 30 NGBs here. We've got some other folks who are involved in coaching with some local soccer clubs that have really taken up the interest in developing their coaches, which I commend them for, and getting them together. And I haven't reached out to folks who are working at the YMCA necessarily, or Boys and Girls Clubs, to include them on that. That may be my next that will be my next challenge, and bring those folks together for these conversations. And it's fun. A lot of times, the handful of us that get together here in town, we have great conversations. We learn what each other's doing and share those ideas. And I think at that local level, that can be really impactful. And I also do it because, like you said, most of us, we're a one-person shop, especially most of the NGBs, and sometimes it's just nice to know that someone else is having the same problem that I'm having, and maybe how they worked on it to make it better. So if you're out listening in Rochester, Minnesota, look around and see who are some other folks that are of like-minded, and start to get together and build and share resources. So there you go. That's my plug.
You just said something. And there's something I need to pick up on too. Just as we've not put this up on the website yet, and it's not been announced officially, but I'm going to sneak it out here to people who are listening, that one of our keynotes is going to be John Kessel from USA Volleyball at the summit this year. He is somebody who's got a long career in coach education, coach development, and has been approaching it as a learning model and a growth model from, I think, from the very beginning. He certainly was somebody who was incredibly influential in my thinking as I entered the space and began teaching and started out as a content-focused approach in coaching education, and really excited that he's going to be one of our keynotes talking about the growth and evolution and what he sees with, 30-plus years as a coach educator and coach in volleyball?
Gosh, at least, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't want to add any more years than that just in case, but it's been forever that I know of.
Yes, yeah, as well. And he has, he's on an earlier podcast as well talking about kind of motor learning and some of the things that he's brought into volleyball from that world where, just how, the drills that I grew up doing anyway, I won't speak to anybody else, but I'm pretty sure that most everybody else did the same drills playing basketball that I did, how they're probably not very effective. And there's a lot of folks out there who are willing to try to slay those sacred cows. Brian McCormack, who I've never met before in my life, I follow him on Twitter, and he's a basketball coach, and he regularly posts videos of kids doing drills, and his question is, why? What is this drill doing for you? So for drill-based sports, that's a great way of looking at it with that. So, all right, I'm going to put this in Q&A mode real quick here, and just to see if anybody has anything for you. And so let's try that. Okay, Heidi, you have a question? Oh, I thought Heidi had a question there. Oh, Heidi, I'm not hearing you. Hey, Heidi.
Can you hear me now?
There. Yes. Sorry about that.
Okay, I typed it anyway. What was the ballpark figure cost for the CDA for hockey and swimming? Just out of curiosity.
I'd rather talk about that one offline, just because they had us do we were specializing the program to them, and okay. We were bringing the way that we're doing that one will be specialized to what the organization needs. When we look at the academies that will be in June, where individuals can attend, the price will be somewhere around $350 for the 3-day workshop. So that would be for an individual person. When we do it for an organization, it depends on what they need in terms of how specialized they need it and stuff like that.
Okay, I was just thinking about like our ratings exams, our examiners being trained in certain areas. So I just was curious.
And that's something we could. Well, yeah, and Heidi, we can talk offline, and one of the things we're working with is there's the ICCE stuff that ties into. So when we do an ICCE workshop, it actually also gets somebody prepared, and they become an ICCE. They get the designation from the ICCE as being a trained facilitator or a trained coach supporter from the ICCE definition. But other workshops, if like we've got this group of people and these are the kinds of skills from a teaching perspective they need, we can personalize and work with a group on how many people you need to go through, if it's going to be a day or 2 days or 3 days. So there's a lot of flexibility there in the model.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Heidi.
Sure.
Just FYI, Heidi attended the ICE Academy in Orlando and has publicly raved about it. So I'll go ahead and say that part of it. Hold on, Kristen. Sorry, I muted you by accident there.
I wondered.
So, well, in real life, I'd love to be able to do that. I
know.
But yeah, I know that's really neat.
Pick up the pace and we run faster, and then I can't talk.
Oh, good point. Yes. All right. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap this up because we are running a little bit long. I want to be courteous to your time as well. But thanks for I think thanks for bringing up to speed on the USCCE. And I didn't say this at the start, but well, I did mention it. Just kind of disclosure, I am on the planning committee for the summit, and have been a big fan of the USCCE. That's a lot of really odd letters to go together, as I say with my little bit of speech impediment that I had as a kid. But I've been a big fan, and I'm glad it's out on its own, standing, putting forth the mission to make make better coaches out there, and to share information. So anyway, so thanks again. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody who was on the live call, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Again, we have a special one next week with Sergio Lara Barciel, who is going to talk about some things going on in Europe. I Coach Kids program that he's involved in, and I'm looking forward to talking to him as well. So everyone, thanks for joining us.
He's one of my favorite people, so thank you,
and one
Sam.
of Kristen's favorite people. Kristen did turn me on to him. I'd seen a presentation he had done, and kind of forgotten about it, and then Kristen was kind enough to put him on my radar again. All right.
There's lots of people doing lots of great work, so I look forward to continuing networking everybody together.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for being on the call, and I'll catch you next time.